6:39 coming up towards 6:40 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, the Employers Consultative Association, the ECA, says that their members have been meeting since March to discuss the possible impact and indeed the obvious impact and the long-term impact of the coronavirus. Since the imposed safety regulations, employers were forced to either close their doors or to operate on more flexible terms. With the restrictions now extended until May the 15th, the Prime Minister has indicated, based on how well we behave, it could be May the 10th, we'll say. Life post-COVID-19 can prove to be a challenge for employers who may be forced to adjust their workflow operations. Well, we're joined on Zoom by two key personalities with the ECA, Kester Nanku, the chairman, and Stephanie Fingal, the CEO, are joining us now. Very good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Fizzy.
Good to have you with us. We have Ms. Fingal on camera, but let's see if we can get Mr. Nanku on camera as well via Zoom to get his perspective. And indeed, Mr. Nanku, first and foremost, what is your sense of employers and their ability to cope with a challenge like this, an unprecedented challenge like this?
Well, Fazir, I must say that you used the right description, unprecedented. And we are into uncharted waters, lots of uncertainty. And from the employer's perspective, a lot of adjustments will be required. And a lot of adjustments in terms of physical space, in terms of how business is conducted, the relationships with employees. And at the end of the day, it must be, and I'm using the word must, it must be a shared responsibility. We must recognize from get-go that we are all in this together. And there is no one-size-fits-all. So again, it is important for that shared common understanding. And the ECA has been doing quite a lot, I must say, in terms of providing information, requisite and relevant information at various fora. Our website, we did a bulletin number 4, which I would urge everyone to take a look at, because it provides guidance, whilst it's not intended to be used as legal advice. I think because of the strength of the ECA in terms of industrial relations, principles and practices, I think we are urging stakeholders to take a look, because it provides options for adjustments to work and salary arising out of the COVID-19. It speaks to the preventative measures, reiterating all those preventative measures. And one of the significant things, given where we are today, is that very early the ECA started advising employers, as far as is humanly possible, to avoid unnecessary travel. Speak to the employee population, the respective employee populations, advising them of the significance, in addition, quite naturally, to the protocols of social distancing and all the rest of it. I don't know if Stephanie wants to jump in here, because she would have been leading a lot of the conversations with these different stakeholders, if I may.
Okay, Ms. Fingal, if you'd like to get into the discussion, because I have a particular question for you, as far as, essentially, I'd like to get your perspective in relation to what Mr. Nanku alluded before I ask my question. So if you'd like to follow on from what Mr. Nanku is suggesting.
Yes, you asked a question, Fazir, about whether employers were prepared. And principally, I would say, for the majority, no. We have not had something like this in this country, and I am quite aged and haven't experienced this at all, where we had to have such massive reduction in labor and incapacity by a number of employers, particularly the small and medium businesses, to pay beyond the immediate week or the immediate month, to pay salaries and all the other benefits and allowances and those statutory things that they must pay. So what you find is that from a financial perspective, and even in arranging work to actually deliver the business, if you were not deemed non-essential and you still had to provide a service, but you had limitations in space and things like that. You didn't have the right technology available. You found that a lot of people were caught, without any understanding or even, thinking as to what am I going to do. So one of the things I can say that we learned from this very early, we had started looking at the international scenario. And I'm urging employers, as Mr. Nanku urged people to look at our bulletin, that we are in a time now where you have to begin looking at what's happening outside and preparing for it. Don't wait for it to land on the doorstep. And that is exactly what we said in our first bulletin. Let's not wait for it to arrive in Trinidad and Tobago. So for those who had the vision and the foresight, they might have prepared and were able to, recoup quickly and keep their businesses going or find a way to manage both the employees, the responsibilities to the employees, as well as to their clients and customers and so on. So that it really was something unexpected. And I would say for a number of employers, and this is not an indictment on employers, it's the first time we have had something like this. So it behoves us now to have business continuity, both financial and physical and staff, etc., in going forward.
So, and in that sense, Ms. Fingal, and I'm sure Mr. Nankel will want to offer perspective, but if I could ask you first, Ms. Fingal, has that brought about the basic instinct of self-preservation? From the business point of view, who do I lay off or retrench or dismiss to cut costs? And from the employee side, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get laid off? What is my recourse if I get called into the office and I'm being told I'm being made redundant and so on? Has it come down to that?
Well, I start off with the employees, Fazir, and I think the employees were caught by surprise. Remember, this thing came, almost overnight, like a thief in the night, we would say. And while employees would have been hearing, what's going on here and there, we started off since Petrotrin, with some employers having difficulty in retaining staff members, those who were subcontractors and things like that. So for some of them, they already had that experience. So some employees were in that mood already, expecting at any time they might have been retrenched or laid off or so. But what you find with this now, it's spread across the entire economy. And employees, I think, were just waiting. They weren't sure what was going to happen next. We also had to wait on the government's instructions as to who should stay open, et cetera, et cetera. So that employees, in our case, I would say that, again, very early, alerting employees, and this is what employers should be doing. Listen, we don't know what's going to happen. The salaries that we have in February, how we manage our salary for March, et cetera, those things should have been considered. But I don't think that was the norm. So employees were at a disadvantage just to some extent. Employers, on the other hand, you find that in our experience, while they are challenged, in some cases they have no money to pay really. No employer we have had come out outright and said, well, because of COVID-19, I'm sending home 10 persons, or I want to do it. I believe the exhortations we have made in our bulletins, at least our members, we have found a number of them trying to find ways, even if they can't pay. How do we treat with our employees? What can we do? We encourage them, fill all those forms that you can have. Don't wait for the employee to come to you. Get the data ready. Start preparing for the employees. And people did take us on. Some of them I know employers who called 60 individual employees to communicate what was going to be happening in their company because they didn't have the technology to do Zoom and all those things. And so employers have responded in different ways. It's very difficult. Some have had to lay off without pay. Some have laid off with pay, reduced the working hours, and different options. But for those who have consulted with us and based on our feedback, people have not been rushing to say, I'm going to retrench. That has also been something that's they're tentative about that. And we have told them, don't let COVID-19 be the reason for retrenching. Some people had legitimate reasons before, and even then we have asked, could you hold your hand on it? So I believe that the employer environment, sometimes they're compelled to do it. If there is no work, no business, they can't open and they have no money, then they may have to lay off without pay. But it's not the first option in the majority of cases.
We'll take a commercial break in a short while, but let me bring Mr. Nanko back into the discussion because you used the phrase shared responsibility, and we're getting familiar with a lot of new phrases now, or reacquainted with phrases like the new normal, as we heard from the Chief Medical Officer yesterday. Mr. Nanko, do you get the sense that the business environment of employer-employee relationships is ready for a new normal with this shared responsibility and a different way of looking at that relationship?
Well, Fazir, the answer is yes. It's yes because, as I indicated earlier, there is no one knows where this thing is going and where it's going to end. And therefore, it's incumbent upon parties, employers, employees, to be prepared to sit down and have meaningful dialogue, meaningful conversations about how we go forward. The trade union movement, I have no doubt, will have to change its whole approach, because it is no longer going to be business as usual. As you said, normal is gone. Normal is gone. And if normal is gone, therefore we have to sit down as responsible people and talk about how can we move forward in a way that, as the Prime Minister indicated, it's about saving lives. Certainly there would be situations where layoffs would be mandatory, which may lead to retrenchment, okay? Because at the end of the day, you need revenue. That risk-reward scenario is going to be very important. But at the end of the day, Fazir, it has to be about a shared common understanding and parties to the conversation recognizing that it cannot be business as usual. So there must be sacrifices on either end. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
6:51 in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back with our two guests because it's very important to continue to get their perspectives in relation to what is a very vital element of our society: work, jobs, employers, employees. I will get some more thoughts from our two guests right after this. (6:53 in Trinidad and Tobago. A few minutes left in our discussion with the two representatives of the Employers Consultative Association, Keston Nanku. Whenever you hear Nanku, you think Fatima College and Colleges League football. But anyway, let's move past that. He's the chairman of the ECA, and we also have with us Stephanie Fingal, CEO of the ECA as well. And Ms. Fingal, of course, it's an unprecedented situation. It was already difficult economically, even before the arrival of COVID-19. What is your advice? What are you hopeful that could happen in this very challenging time in this relationship between employers and employees?
It's a difficult thing for an employer to have to face an employee when he has no money and to ask him to come out to work or to come out and do work for less pay than he should already get. It is difficult for an employee to have no pay, and there's an ecosystem in business. If employees have no work and have no pay, they have no resources to buy anywhere else. And then all the other businesses that now have no purchases being made, they are impacted because they can't also secure services and products from other places. So I think it's a time, as Mr. Nanku was saying, for us to really consider this thing. There's a relationship between employers keeping employees engaged and paying as far as you can pay, adjust to working hours, whatever you have to do, but employees also understanding that they too have part of this responsibility in the sense that it's if we all work together, unions come into the picture, we do have to consider, can we be demanding certain things from employers in this particular scenario? Employers may very well now have to spend a lot of money on PPE for their staff because you want to keep them safe, keep your clients safe, and keep their families safe. You're going to have additional costs. At the same time, you have less income or less revenue coming into the business. So there is that requirement for an urgent understanding by employers to understand if you do not keep people employed in some form or fashion, let revenue find its way, then you would find to employees, the business chain cannot continue. So every single stakeholder, from the banks, to the businessman, to the investor, to the shareholder, to the employees, to the unions. Everybody has to understand adjustment is needed. And if we stay on course and everyone makes that shift, make the accommodation, it wouldn't be forever. It has to be for a period of time. We are hearing people talking about November 2021 as coming back to normal. So we have to anticipate almost a whole year of adjustment. What that means on the ground has to be something that is agreed, and where necessary, we have employment contracts. Do we hold on to employers and say, if you don't pay up on that contract, we are going to take you to court? Or should there be some collaboration between unions and employees and employers to find the middle ground so that everyone stays engaged, the economy remains viable? If not, if this economy collapses, it could only be because we have not been able to come together and find some mechanism, some way, some adjustment to keep our economy running.
So let me leave the final word with Mr. Nanku. Based on what we just heard from Mr. Fingal, Mr. Nanku, are you optimistic? Are you fearful? Are you concerned that it could go to a lot of litigation? The industrial court will be busy. Are you inclined to believe, based on the prevailing evidence and the consultations that you've been involved in so far, that employers and employees are inclined to find that middle ground?
Yes, Fazir, I would say that from all the feedback that I've been getting, I know recently there was a conversation between some of the primary trade unions, and they spoke with the COO, our CEO, sorry, and they were basically saying, we are willing to come together and speak with employers. And I think that for me signal that they have recognized that they can no longer continue going forward with the kind of industrial relations, positioning, and all the rest of it. It is a time, as Stephanie just articulated, for parties to come together in the best interest of the whole. You see, at the end of the day, I'm of the belief that every crisis comes with a seed of a greater benefit. So it's finding that seed, and that seed could only be found if parties are prepared to arrive at a shared common understanding so that the survival of all can have a better opportunity for being realized. The other thing that one has to be very mindful of is that COVID-19, the reopening of the economy, and the government, we must applaud the government for the whole approach. COVID-19, the reopening of businesses must be within the context of the management and where we are on that curve, as has been articulated for COVID-19. Because if we don't, we're going to find ourselves in a serious difficulty, because we do not have the level of technical resources that would allow us to respond if there's a second wave, as so many that we are hearing about all over the place. It's an opportunity, and a tremendous opportunity for parties. I am seeing this as such a great opportunity to begin again, for us to now put things in the perspective that will allow the creation of a virtuous cycle. Stephanie referred to the flow of disposable income and how important that is. We need to get that going if we are to have any kind of economy that can be sustained as we go forward into the future.
Indeed, it has to be an ongoing decision. By the way, that clock behind you, Mr. Nanku, is 3 minutes faster, because it's now just coming up towards a minute after 7 o'clock, and you're showing almost 5 past 7. Clearly, you're a man who likes to be on time and even early in that regard. But
Absolutely.
thanks very much for taking the time to offer us a perspective this morning, together with Ms. Fingal as well. So we are into our news time. Let's go to that now, and then we move into the second hour of our show.